whether Ibn Sahl, or Al-Kindi, or Ibn Haytham, or Al-Farisi, and all the others. And that's why the Muslims were the first to invent the camera obscura, where you see the ancestor of our cameras today, and the telescopes and so on and so forth. Because Islam, Muslims had to do this, they had to do experiments. And you can go in medicine, it's again the same thing. The Greeks never conducted any one single, however brilliant they were with their speculation. Muslims, on the other hand, they had to see and check everything. If you look at the history of medicine in Al-Qayrawan, it was all in Tunisia, it was all experimentation and so on. And remember we mentioned that Al-Qayrawan was the first center of medical learning in the world. So we can go on through all sciences. Now, take this aside. Take some of the other facts or aspects of modern civilization. Take the idea of the book. The Greeks never had a book or a library. Libraries are not a concept, a Greek concept. In fact, the early Socrates, for instance, the philosopher, was accused by the powerful people that he was misleading young people by teaching them through whatever learning he had. The concept of the library, which is the center of learning, is an Islamic concept because the Muslims were the first people to turn paper into mass manufactured product and produce hundreds of thousands, if not millions of books. Every Muslim scholar before any other civilization, this is easy for you to check, had his or her personal library. We talked 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago about how many copied manuscripts, women in particular, did this work in some civilization. If you look at the hospital, a hospital as we have today, free medicine to everyone, Jew, Christian, poor, male, female, wars and so on. This is another Islamic concept. It has nothing to do with the Greeks. They never had a single hospital in their whole history before that. Maybe later, yes, the Byzantines. But in the early, it is another thing. It's again always the social welfare that's in Islam, and some interrupts from the faith, and so on. You look at the university. The madrasas, which are the foundation of the modern campuses, it's again an Islamic invention. Take some sciences such as algebra. Algebra has been named after the title of Al-Khwarizmi's book. He wrote Al-Jabr al-Muqabala, so what did the Muslims do? They take his title and turn it to science. His name, Al-Khwarizmi, became a science, algorithm. The first spheres we can go, techniques in farming. The Greeks never had a farming tradition in farming. The Muslim farming tradition comes in fact from Yemen, and then it was carried to Spain and so on and so forth, then it impacted on Europe. Yemenis on the other were very, very advanced people as far as farming and other technologies. And today, another people of Saudi Arabia, which is modern Saudi Arabia, who were behind these things. Greeks never had these ideas. For instance, those of you who are interested in farming, crop rotation and so on, use of fertilizers, water irrigation techniques and so on. All these were Islamic. The whole agricultural revolution was derived from Muslim works by Ibn al-Hawam and Ishbili and so on and so forth. Now, take the concept of the check. The Greeks never had a check. So we can go on, the windmill, engineering, the arches, which are the foundation of our modern market. These things, you will look for them in Greek civilization, you won't find them. So here, to sum up, the idea that Islamic civilization owes to Greece, anyone can go and check it and find, from what I have been saying, that's wrong. You can also check it through another way. You can look at the works of the Greeks, and you look at the works of the Muslim scientists, and then you compare whether they are similar. You can look at the works of the Greeks, the modern scientists, and the works of the medieval Europeans when they borrowed science, whether what they borrowed was Greek or Islamic. It's very easy, go to the library, check it. And then when you check these things, you realize the nonsense that historians or people who consider themselves historians are preaching. Sometimes you think they are doing it on purpose, sometimes I don't know what you think of them, frankly. But you can demolish their arguments very easily. Now, if you take these things all these facts, and you take many others, but such as the historical aspect, and I would like to finish on this, as far as this point is concerned. If you check, you see sometimes, again, as Muslims, we shouldn't just listen as some of our people listen sometimes, such as Jim Khalil, who did good work, but sometimes you shouldn't take for granted what everybody, you should just go and check it. For instance, when they tell you that Muslims or Europeans went to translate from Arabic Greek works, this is a big lie, or fallacy, we don't use lie. Because the Western scholars themselves, in the medieval times, when they translated, they made it clear. They used to say, we are after Arabic learning. They didn't say you are going to get Greek learning. When you take Abelard of Bath, the first English scientist, his work is in the library, go and read him. He doesn't say, I praise my Greek masters. He said, I praise my Arab masters. Yeah. When they go to Toledo, they say, we are going to go to the center of Islamic Arabic learning. They were very clear. What they translated Al-Khawarizmi, Al-Battani, Ibn Sina, and so on and so forth. They did translate some Greek words. Now, another thing, sorry, I think I should finish on this point. Final point where you can contradict this thing that it is Greek science. Here is Greece, and this used to be Byzantium. And there were many parts here that were also Greek influenced. Western scholars, if they wanted Greek learning, they should have gone here to get it. It was available. They didn't go there, they went here. Why should they leave Greek learning, which was accessible to them in their own lands, easy to translate from Greek to Latin, and go and get it from here in Arabic, which was so difficult for them to translate, struggle, a huge problem. They used, if they didn't have it, so that gives you an idea. They got nothing from here, or here, or here. Everything was obtained from here, there, and other places. And as I explained in the first lesson, every time a region in the West marked a change and transformation, it was after it made contact with the Muslim world, whether it made contact with Muslim Cordoba, or Fez, or Al-Qayrawan, or Palestinian Syria. Not before, not then. If it was Greek learning, these regions should have changed before they made contact with Islam. If it was Greek learning, Greece, instead of the Muslim world, should have been the power in the medieval age. Byzantium should have been the power. They were not. Byzantium was one of the weakest. So you see, you can raise, in fact, more points on this. So when you study things historically and you follow them, then you realize what great nonsense when people keep telling you, or you keep hearing that Islamic science or modern science is mainly Greek, or what the West borrowed from Muslims was Greek learning. Now, you have, we might talk more about this Greek thing later on. Now, the second aspect, the second form of fallacy is the one, is that Islam is a source of backwardness, and that Muslims are backward because they are Muslim, because of their faith. This is something which you find very, there are books specializing on this subject, that Muslims had a brilliant civilization when they copied Greece, but when they went back into Islam, that was the end. That was backwardness. And a few days ago, I was listening to on the BBC Newsnight, one of the leading historians who is always on TV, obviously, here, Professor Ferguson, and he was talking, and the reason why they said Muslim societies are in a mess is because Islam and the Turks. This is the usual thing. And you cannot, these are utter misrepresentations of history and so on. The decline of Islamic civilization. When you look at the history of Islam, as you see here, this Norman Smith, he agrees with what I say, as you know, more or less, that he and also these other scholars also agree with the same point, that it is wrong to assimilate Islam with darkness. From these quotes, you realize that there are some scholars who to understand that there are fundamental distortions when Islam is blamed for decline, like Christians here, and before him Smith, and also I think one or two others. Let's see whether we have another one. Not this one. Anyway, I think this, because the idea that is spread all over scholarship is that Muslims or Islam preaches backwardness and the burning of books, and Islam imams are there looking for every scholar to persecute him. This is the idea, and that once Muslims were advanced, when they imitated the Greeks, once Islam has a great place, that's it. It's opened the door to backwardness, especially if you add the Turkish element. Now, we are not going to, again, it's impossible for us to look at the whole issue now, but just to look at some points. If historians looked at history correctly, as many of you here know, Islamic, the Muslim world, Arabia first, before, because it's in Arabia where everything started. Arabia before Islam, as all of you know, was in the Jahiliyyah. What was the Jahiliyyah? Everybody knows it's sacrifice of young girls, wars, gambling, violence, and so on. There was one or two good things. For instance, Arabs were men of honor and so on and so forth, great warriors and so on. But before Islam, Arabia was just a little tribe. After Islam, what happened? It became soon spreading from them the greatest nation on earth at the time for centuries. So here, just this fact should tell you how before Islam you have one situation and after Islam you have another. That alone should show that Islam had a positive element, not just in Arabia, as we mentioned the first time, Also, if you look at North Africa, Spain before the arrival of Islam was living in prehistoric times. People used to eat each other in Spain. It never had a brilliant civilization before the Muslims. The Visigoths, who ruled before the Muslims, were some of the most barbaric, destructive people in history. Suddenly, the Muslims arrive in Spain, and Spain becomes the greatest nation in Europe. So that must be something. Okay. You see, you don't need to study Norway. The same thing with Sicily. As soon as you even look, we are not going to do politics now here, it's not right. If you look at even Turkey, which is now under more or less an Islamic government, you look at the difference, how the difference it's made. We can go on, this is a recent experience. Now, you look through history, you find the same thing repeating itself, not just in different places of the Arab world. You look at Indonesia, Malaysia. Malaysia, before the arrival of Islam, there used to be cannibalism, sacrifice of young people, wars, gambling, alcohol was decimating. When Islam arrived, it brought a major transformation, a brilliant civilization. India, which is modern India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, it was under Muslim rule, the jewel of the crown. It was the most advanced country or region at some point in history under Islamic rule. You can multiply the examples. So this, on its own, should enlighten that Islam, rather than being wherever it went, without any exception, including in Africa, anywhere, you had a major transformation, a brilliant civilization. The most brilliant civilizations in Africa, in the state of Mali and others, happened precisely at the height of Islamic rule there. You can go and study the history of Africa, you will find precisely when the state of Mali in Africa somewhere, it's not just modern Mali here, it was much wider than this, was precisely when Islam was at the height in this place. So there must be a cause and effect there. You could look at the issue from another thing. Let's set aside all the things about what you find in the Quran, encouraging people to learn and so on and so forth, and in the Hadith and so on and so forth. If you look at the sciences themselves, here again, to contradict the idea that Islamic civilization derives from Greece, you find that precisely some sciences such as mathematics, astronomy, geography and so on developed precisely because of the faith. I give you an example. Why did Al-Khwarizmi write his Kitab al-Algebra, Calculus 1? The reason was for him in obedience of the message of the Quran, he wanted to answer some of the issues that had to be